So if I was going to begin painting this sketch, first thing I want to do is I want to look at the direction that it's going. This one is horizontal, traditional landscape orientation. So it's going side to side. The paper's not going up and down. So I want to make sure mine is going to go the same way. And then both of these research images, they're a nice pair. They've got a lot of common elements. I think we're going to take some more inspiration possibly from this dock. We can see that it's going towards a vanishing point, so it gets smaller towards the end. It's also lower than the horizon line because it doesn't go that far out. So we want to make sure we get these things accurate in our own sketch. Cool, thanks for letting me know. So I'm gonna go in and switch my camera here. So I've got my paper. The first thing I want to do is I want to turn it so that it's going side to side, just like my or the sketch here and the research image. So I've got it going side to side. I also want to be painting on the bumpy side of the paper. The bumpy side is actually the front. The smooth side is actually the back. So on the back, I could put my name. And on the front, I'm going to paint. Before I begin painting, if I want to make a really light sketch with my pencil, that's often a good idea just to give you an indication of where you want to paint. And we're using the smallest size watercolor paper in our kit. If you have paint, or not paint, sorry, if you have tape, you can use tape to tape it down, but that's optional. It's not a required step. If you don't have tape to tape it down, what I recommend is just draw yourself a small little border with the ruler, and then you'll have some edges that you can avoid painting in. And by avoiding making your paint go all the way to the edge, it'll prevent the paper from wrinkling as much. All right. So the other thing is, since this is watercolor, the paint is very, very, very transparent. And for our purposes, that means we're gonna need to make our sketch super light, otherwise we'll see it. So we don't wanna press really hard when we're creating our sketch. So our horizon line is just a little bit above halfway. So I'm gonna make a really light line for that. And it's basically the edge of our water here. Our vanishing point would be somewhere on the horizon line. So I can use that to give me the edges of my dock. The dock should be about this wide. So I'm gonna really, 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 really lightly sketch towards the horizon line. It's not gonna go all the way because our dock does not go all the way to the horizon. That would be clear across the lake. It's really just a small fishing dock. Then I can connect this here. It also has some of these little posts sticking up. The posts would also follow a line to our vanishing point. So I'm going to super, super lightly make another line here to give me an indication of how tall the posts should be. So my first post might be this tall, my second post might be this tall, etc., etc. Right? They get shorter as they go. With perspective. So this is a fun little mini perspective review. Now your sketch may not have any of these elements. This one is slightly more complicated than some, and that's okay. I'm going to take my eraser and clean up my extra lines. Now that I know how tall my posts should be, I could go ahead and turn them into little columns. If my lines got a little bit too dark, it's a great opportunity for me to go in and use my kneaded eraser, which is the squishy gray eraser, to sort of lighten up my sketch down here. So I am going to do that. The other things that we need in our sketch are really just some mountains back here. So we've got sort of a mountain that comes down here, and another mountain down here. I may not even draw the clouds yet. I might just sort of let them be. Kind of like that. All right, those lines got pretty dark as well. So I can use my kneaded eraser, go tap, tap, tap. It'll lighten up the line without getting rid of it, which is exactly what we want. So kneaded eraser is 100% your friend here when we're working on the sketches. And then I'm really ready to begin painting, just like we did on our last class on Monday. We want to paint from larger areas to smaller areas. I'm going to take the color inspiration from the second image here as well, at least for the lake part. And really even the dock here has a bluish hue. So the first thing I might paint, I might go in and I might paint sort of a bluish grayish color. I've taken my blue and I've mixed it with a little bit of brown or green. And I'm going to also add a lot of water so that it's a nice light color that I'm starting with. And I'm not going all the way to the edges. I'm trying to stay mostly inside that little border that I drew for myself. Here I'm painting wet on dry, so it's okay if my water doesn't go, if there's a little tiny bit of gaps. We're just adding really the first layer to get some paint down and begin to add context to our drawing. So we're working from large areas to small areas, from light to dark. If you have an area that needs to stay white in your image, you'll need to leave it the color of the paper. Once we add the watercolor paint, it's pretty hard to take it away entirely. So I really like to work in lots of layers when I'm watercolor painting. I always recommend starting with a nice light wash. You can always make things darker. It's really hard to make them lighter again if they've gotten too dark to start with. All right. And the sky has sort of these dappled clouds that are, I would say, purplish. So maybe I'll mix up a color combo between purple and red, which is again super, super light. And I could begin to, instead of adding a wash this time, I'm going to do sort of an irregular pattern to begin to suggest some of the cloud cover in the sky. It's going all the way down to our mountain ranges. I did go over my border a little bit there. That's okay. Not the end of the world. All right, and now I've got most of my first layer done. Maybe I'm also going to add a bluish brown mix for the dock. The dock isn't like purely brown. It's also got some color reflecting sort of from the water and the overcast sky. Maybe I'll even sort of apply my paint in rows to suggest the planks of our wooden dock. And I can always add more rows as I go. They would get smaller as they go towards the back, so mine are just going to sort of run into each other, and that's okay. Yeah, and with that, I have most of my first layer. And I might let it dry before I add any more. I could also, if I wanted to, add the mountains, but I might wait for this to dry first. All right, so let's add some of the sun reflection colors that we can see in our photo. I have a habit of liking to paint a lot with a really big brush. This is sort of a small area, so it might be good to do with our detail brush as well. Not sure how I feel about that. Again, this one's all about experimenting. We can experiment with colors, we can experiment with techniques. It's about learning, it's about growth. So I'm sort of using wet on dry, and then I might sort of blend it out with a bit more paint or water, not paint. Oop. To capture some of the sunset colors that's just going on here in my photo. This is a really small detail area. Maybe I should work more on details on the second day. But you know, it's okay to sort of try and experiment with different things. So I'm using some water to blend, make my strokes look a little more random instead of just like little paintbrush stamps. I'm gonna grab a Kleenex. Kleenex can be really good for lifting areas of paint. Yeah, if you don't have specific questions, I'll just sort of keep verbalizing my thought process as I'm adding to this painting. I think I'm gonna go in and do another layer on the dock. To make it look more like that wood, which it is. And I think I want to start working on the mountains a bit. If you want to test out colors, it's always a great idea to test colors on a non-important sheet of paper. Here I just have some printer paper. I actually kind of like that purplish gray color to start my mountains. It's sort of purple plus a little bit of green to make it more neutral and more gray. Even a little brown. Since these are so small down here, I'm using the small detail brush. Mine's a flat one, which works kind of well because it can make a nice smooth line at the bottom here. And maybe for this further back mountain, I'm going to mix a little more water into my palette so it's a lighter color. That way we can show our atmospheric perspective. It's really reflective right now because it's still wet. It won't be shiny once it dries. Sorry? Yeah, I think I want to make the edges of my lake a bit of a deeper blue. And we can think about what techniques might work best. Maybe I'll pre-wet the paper and apply wet on wet for a smoother application of paint. Since I already do have some paint here, we want to be careful about thinking about it too, though, as we're painting. And maybe I'll pull the paint sort of towards the top with some water for a graded wash to smoothly blend it into my other color that's already there. Still a little heavy at the bottom. We could always go back and add more layers later. We'll try on this side without the wet on wet. We'll see what the difference is. Let's see. Right now, I think visually where my eyes go is right towards the sunset, and I think that's good to have some focus there. It's towards the middle of my painting, but it doesn't quite match the relative values of the rest of the sky yet. So I want to be thinking about and referring to my reference picture as I go, and that can help tell me what I need to keep working on. I'm going to go in and also add the mountains as a reflection in the water. So the color might be slightly different because it's, mixing with the water. But I can give that impression that our mountains are also reflecting. Because the sun is setting behind these mountains, this whole dock is really in shadow. So I think I need to keep making it a bit darker. And the shadow in the photo even sort of has a bluish cast to it. So I might want to add that as well. I think I'm going to add another layer of blue here, probably.